I'm going to show you how I changed the Klan. I'll tell you what I did. Okay? You don't confront them on any of their beliefs. You side with them first, but you get to the guy in charge. There's always a guy in charge of every group. You try to work on him. So I fired a gun and split a cigarette near my little girl's mouth. She doesn't even remember this. So what I did was I cut the cigarette with a razor blade, put a hairpin in it, and taught her how to roll it. And the hairpin blew tobacco all over me after I fired the gun. I wouldn't do it either with my own daughter, but I didn't tell that to Lou Merman. He was very impressed. He said, will you come on down to the Klan, that's the way he spoke, and speak to our boys about what you're doing? I think you're a smart guy, and they ought to know about it. I said, Lou, I can't talk to them. They wouldn't understand. He said, don't worry, I'll get him to listen to you. I'll tell him to listen. This man, he knows what we're talking about. That's the way he spoke. So I used to make wire recordings. We didn't have tape recorders in the old days. There were wire recorders. Anybody remember that? Just a wire going by a magnetic head. And we magnetized the wire. So I used to make recordings of their dialect so I'd know when I made the motion picture in the future on how to change people, show how it was done. So anyway, he invited me to a Klan meeting, and I said, Lou, you do some marvelous things. Will you teach us how to do those things? He says, well, what you want to know? I said, well, you can just look at a person and tell us all about him, and you don't even know the person. I said, will you teach me how to do that? He says, I didn't think I could teach you nothing, Jacque. You're a smart guy. I said, I don't know anything about how to change, how to look at people and tell what they're like. He said, well, I'd be glad to teach you. I said, next Klan meeting. So I brought my equipment down with him, and I projected a picture on the wall of a character. White, sandy mustache, gray hair. And he's telling me all about the guy. He's a good Christian man, I'd say. I'd say a patriot, maybe a war veteran, projecting like mad his own values into this character. And I said, after about 10 minutes of detail, family man, God-fearing man, I'd say, anything else you want to add, Lou? He said, no, that pretty much sums him up. So I pulled the bottom of the picture out. He said, wanted by the FBI for subversive action against the United States. And the Klansmen were laughing at Lou for the first time, because he used to go on and nothing checked out, you know. They laughed, and so I said to the guys walking, you guys shut your mouth. Lou knows more about people than we do. He's the head of the Klan. You protect him. You're on side with him. So he goofed up this time. Don't we all goof up sometime? Then the next thing is a record of a guy speaking about aviation, heavy English Oxford accent. So he says, I see a skinny Englishman without that and a bald head, very white. And he's an educated guy, I say a college guy, well-educated, smart guy, because what he was talking about was beyond and above what Lou knew or anyone else. And then the image comes on later, special record I made, and it's a black guy raised in England. And completely off. White, skinny white man with a bald head. So I said, Lou, he said, after the film, he said, goddamn nigger talking like an Englishman. Goddamn nigger talking like an Englishman. I said, that nigger, I have to use those words, was raised in England. And if he was raised in France, he talked like a Frenchman. He said, you mean to say that niggers talk like niggers because I brought up in a nigger environment? I said, precisely. That's the only way you can talk to him. I said, Lou, if I took your kid and brought him up by an impoverished black family, he goes, is that right? You right? Mm-hmm. Just like that, if that's normal to that environment. If you took a white kid, a Swedish kid, brought him up by a black family, he's going to speak just like a black man. And take a Swedish kid and bring him up in Ireland, did you know that Lincoln was Irish, man? You know, he would speak just like an Irishman. Do you understand that? So you stop condemning people for the way they speak, or the way they act, or the way they think. My job was to turn them around. So they said, you mean to say that children brought up with idea and not got any inborn instincts? I said, Lou, did you have to learn English? Didn't you have to learn how to fire a gun, how to empty the barrel, and the difference between a certain type of gun and another type of gun? He says, yeah. I said, Lou, is there anything you can say in French? I can't speak French. He said, because you never learned how. But to learn to speak, you got to be put in a French environment or a school where French is spoken. If you want to be an aviator, you have to put in an aviation environment. They don't put you in an airplane. They put you in a dummy plane where you move the controls first and gain control of that. Then you don't even get into a real airplane. They show you how to check the tire, make sure there's no water in your fuel, lots of things before you fly. Then you get in an airplane, move the controls, and you learn that there's the aileron, elevator, rudder, all parts. They have to put you in a medical environment to make you a doctor. They're not ophthalmologists or anything. They put you in that environment. Now, we don't see with our eyes. We see with our brain. See, people think you see with your eyes. People think you have eyes to see with. That's another bullshit word. So whenever I meet a person like that, I bring them into a dark room and said, see. I can't see nothing. I said, right, it takes light for you to see. Then they used to try to teach me that plants grow. They can't grow unless there's sunlight, gravity, moisture, soil, temperature, all those things. Plants of themselves can't grow. Nothing is self-operating. That's where God comes in. The whole thing is that nothing moves by itself. A sailboat moves by the wind. You speak by environment. You think from environment, so-called thinking. So everything is acted upon by other things. You're made up of stuff that was here eternally. The bugs you ate, the plants you eat, the tissue you eat is converted to human tissue. If you eat that kind of beef, salami sandwiches and hot dogs with preservatives in it, you damage your living tissue. So we go ahead and do things because there's profit in it. I don't want to get into that too much. I want to get back to Lou Merlin and the Klan. So what I did is I gave them examples and assignments then. They want to know how to. So they said, well, how do you train dogs? My dog listens to me sometimes, and sometimes he don't come over. And my kids will never listen to me. This is Lou Merlin speaking. So I showed him how to get his kids to listen to him. And after that, I set them up with experiments to teach a dog how to walk upright or lie down or roll over, all the basic things. And they said, boy, that works. My kid now listens to me and all that. So, since that worked, I brought the final film in, which I made about 65 years ago in a transit camp. A transit camp is a place where they used to call them wild boys of the road, would be hitchhiking all over America. Their families were displaced, and we were hitchhiking on freight trains, on highways, and Roosevelt administration built these camps, like CC camps, if you know what that is. The kids worked 3 hours a day on the farm, growing the food. We got 75 cents a week. That kept us out of trouble. So, at the transit camp, I needed money for experiments. So I went to the head of the camp. He was an unemployed psychologist, Dr. Holt. I said, I'd like to do some animal experiments. Is that okay with you? He said, what kind of experiments? So I said, well, I want to find out. I catch a lot of raccoons for the North Miami Zoo, and they're very hard to train. I'd like to see what I can do with them. So he said, what are you going to do? What kind of training? He asked me a lot of questions, and I told him what I wanted to do. I wanted all the raccoons to be able to sit at a table. When I bring food there, they all go up and sit at the table. I want them to follow me around under certain conditions. He said, well, I got a Bolex camera. Would you mind photographing what you do? I said, no, not at all. So he lent me his Bolex camera. And when he did that, I said, I want to do an experiment with a pig in particular. He said, I gave him a little discussion of what I want to do with a pig. He said, boy, that sounds fascinating. So